What a mess. Let's get it cleaned up. Back in 2017, I began a full restoration of my 96 Bayliner by tearing it apart all the way down to the hull. From there, I began the rebuilding process, which included learning to fiberglass, rebuilding an engine and outdrive, learning to fair and paint, and even upholstery. Now, I've bought a 28-foot cabin cruiser, and I'm starting all over. Welcome, my name's Jared. Now get ready, because it's going to be a ship show. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Jared, and in this episode we are going to kind of talk about the past year, what we've gotten accomplished, the year coming up, what I need to get accomplished, and maybe touch base a little bit on what I'm currently working on. So I came out here today to work on a few things for the boat, and the garage is an absolute disaster. So I think as a bit of a good start to the new year, maybe we'll get this thing cleaned up. So actually the last couple days I've been sort of putting a deadline on myself to really get things moving here, because I actually started calling a few marinas down in the upper Chesapeake looking for a slip that is going to be the summer home for the boat. So I got to get my butt in gear. So let's get this disaster cleaned up and we'll talk about what's going on. So before we talk about anything else, for those of you guys that have watched the previous video on building the panel for the electrical system components that I'm putting in the boat, that thing has been going well. So basically what I've been doing is locating all of the components on the board for my CAD layout model, and I went through, marked all the holes with a transfer punch. That went perfectly smooth, everything worked out well. Then I wanted to go through and drill all the holes so I could seal them up with a little bit of epoxy and then paint, so those holes will be a little bit more waterproof. So again, got that done, holes drilled, located everything, screwed everything in, made sure, verified everything was good, everything looked great. Cool, let's move on. So the next step in that process was to get some primer and paint on that panel. I decided to, for no good reason other than just to try it, to go with the TotalBoat primer and topside paint. I think it's called like Wet Edge or something, but the primer went on great. Put on, I think, 3 coats, sanded in between each coat, and I went to go put on the paint. And the temperature recommendations for that stuff are like 50 degrees as a minimum, I believe. So I was flirting around with those limits out in the garage, but holding it right around 50 to 52 with the space heater going. So put the first coat of paint on, and then I proceeded to take it down to the basement to dry down there with the space heater because it was supposed to get cold that night. Went down the next day, touched the parts, and like paint came off. It was not just tacky, like paint was still coming off on my hand. It's like, what the heck? Did some research. Apparently this is a common problem that people have had, and unfortunately TotalBoat's response to it is you must have put the paint on too thick, which I don't think I did because I followed the recommendations on a foam roller and all that kind of stuff. They basically say it will dry, just let it go. So I said, okay, let it go. Next day came down, tacky. All right, not enough time. So I even moved it up. This is ridiculous, but I moved them up to my bathroom upstairs. Figured smaller room, vent fan, went up to my bathroom, like literally hung the stuff on the shower curtain, put my space heater in there on 80 and let it go for, I don't know, 24 hours. After that, still tacky. Like, you gotta be kidding me. So I'm starting to think the paint's faulty. And this is all happening during the Christmas holiday season, so I'm sure I'm not going to get a hold of anybody at TotalBoat. So I decided to just let it go. So that brings us up to the current speed, which is, it's currently back in the basement, and the 2 rails, like the curved rails that go up against the hull, those are finally not tacky anymore. But that literally took 7 days, I think, to get from paint to that. I cannot waste that much time. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I want to try and put it on thinner this time. Maybe I did put it on too thick. I don't know. So I'm kind of in a pickle there as far as how I want to handle the next couple of coats of paint, because 1 coat is probably not enough. So as part of that whole dilemma, one thing I've decided to do is I went ahead and ordered an electric space heater or garage heater for out here, because with this new deadline I'm trying to meet, I can't waste time on temperatures. So if I got to be putting epoxy on stuff or paint and stuff, I need the garage to be accessible for that kind of stuff. Can't see it here, but I actually ran a 50 amp outlet up there for a 7,500 watt electric heater. Now I know that makes the meter spin 1,000 miles an hour, but it is what it is. So that should be here today, and that will hopefully get me in a situation where I can keep moving forward with stuff like that. So anyway, I kind of was looking back over the past year. I just wasn't feeling very productive, to be honest with you. So I just went back and looked through kind of all the videos I made, and more than I thought I I did more last year than I thought I did. Again, looking forward, I really need to kind of solidify a plan. So obviously the next step forward is going to be continuing on the electrical system. But beyond that, I think I really need to put an emphasis on completing things that are going to be required for the boat to be water ready. So I mean, I don't necessarily need all the creature comfort stuff done in time for the spring to roll around. So like, I don't absolutely have to have the plumbing finished, like the toilet and stuff like that. Like we can take coolers and stuff like that, the fridge, like all that kind of stuff, which honestly, that kind of begs the question of why am I even doing this electrical stuff to begin with? Because that's not really falling under that category. To be honest with you, that was just me being a little bit selfish and wanting to do something fun after having worked on the transom assembly for so long. I do still need to tackle the Bravo 3 drive. I actually started a video on that a long time ago when I first got this boat, because that's kind of one of the first things I dove into, and replacing the lower carrier bearing assembly and that kind of stuff is all going to be part of that. So that is definitely some stuff that is going to need to be done in the near future. And I think once we have this heat available in here, that'll allow me to do some of the refinishing stuff on the drive, which is definitely going to be a big part of it. For whatever reason, this plumbing box is the most full by far. And this is also all plumbing stuff. You can tell I have a lot of that left to do. Well, would you look at what showed up while I was cleaning the garage? Space heater. Let's throw this up real quick, make it more comfortable. No batteries? All right, as you can tell by the lack of sweatshirt, it's warm in here. That thing works awesome, which is cool, because that means I can do things in here now that the weather was prohibiting before, including epoxy. And that brings me to this thing, which I want to get taken care of. I know it's basically completely going against everything I said about things that don't need to be done right away. But this one is more, it's just taking up space in the garage and I want to get it taken care of. And the problem, obviously, you can see here, is we have some rot to deal with. And this is the interior kind of cover for the aft cabin, like storage area, that I will be putting the electronics in. I've already gone ahead and cut this lower piece of plywood out that is rotten. And it's not going to be as simple as just swapping it over and paint and all that kind of stuff, because what I want to do is preserve what's here. So I actually went through with a little circular saw, set the depth just shallow of cutting the whole way through to preserve this face veneer. So I was able then to peel this up and away from the veneer on the front here. So if I can flip this up, you'll be able to see the veneer on the front. And now the goal here is to re-epoxy some plywood on the back, get a good bond to this, and then in theory, I will not lose this nice veneer that's on the front. That's the plan in theory. How I'm gonna go about doing that and kind of reinforcing that joint, I'm not positive yet, because initially my thought was, oh, I'll get a slot cutter for my router, and then I can put a slot down the middle of this and basically just do almost like a tongue and groove thing. But I put the slot cutter in my router and was getting ready to kind of like measure things up and realize that it actually sticks out too far, and the bearing and the nut that holds the bearing on actually hits the face veneer. So that is not going to work. So I think what I'm going to do is epoxy on the new piece of plywood. And then I think I'm going to route out a couple of slots on the backside, since you won't be able to see this, and basically inlay some like strips of like almost like a dowel, like an external dowel, if that makes sense, but make it so it's flush on the back. And then I can paint the back of this white so it all kind of matches. But again, this doesn't really matter because it's on the inside of that storage cabinet, so you don't see it anyway. And once that's done, I can kind of get this back on the boat and out of the way. So to get started, I am just going to get this nice and clean, and then I need to cut out a piece of plywood as the replacement for this. So that's the plan. Do it. All right, well, we got this thing glued up, as you could see in those last clips, and I actually went ahead and I routed out those pockets I talked about and glued in some little, like, I'm calling them dowels, even though they're not technically like a dowel. It's basically like a real thick popsicle stick, essentially, that is laid in just to give me some more long grain in that glue joint. So this should be plenty strong. Again, it's not really under any major load anyway. It's just kind of a face frame for a storage area, but this is looking good. So the next thing I need to do is sand these down nice and flush, and then we'll go ahead and get some paint and primer on the plywood and should be good to go. Let me bring in here so you can see these things I glued in. All right, so you can see they're not, I didn't like make a jig and make them all perfectly identical, so I just numbered them. But as you can see, I routed out this little pocket here. It's probably 4 inches long, something like that. And then made some plywood. Again, they're essentially, you can't see it, but it's basically like a 1/2 inch thick popsicle stick kind of thing. Glued them in with some thickened epoxy. They're sticking up a little bit proud right now, so I have to come in and sand it down flush. And then this should be good to go to coat with primer and paint. And then I can set it aside and get it out of my way. All right, got those sanded down, and the next thing I need to do is I'm going to run around the perimeter with some painter's tape and just mask off to keep the paint from getting on the veneer when I go around and paint the edges of the plywood. So I'm going to get that knocked out real quick. One other thing I want to mention is, if you can see this down here in this corner, some of the veneer is actually missing. So I actually had some painter's tape on the front of this when I was working on this plywood glue up, just to keep the epoxy from getting on the face veneer. And when I removed that painter's tape, it actually lifted some of the veneer with it. And I think what happened is this actually got wet enough in the past that it kind of compromised the wood finish on the front. That's actually okay, because this actually has basically a foam mattress pad for the aft cabin that sits right up against this, which I don't actually love. I don't know if it's going to show up in the camera or not, but there's actually all these tiny little spots that look like they maybe were moldy in the past. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a strip of tape along here, measure down evenly so it's a nice straight line, and I might actually paint the bottom of this face veneer white as well, just because I think, well, for one, I gotta hide this, and two, I tried to get rid of some of these spots and they're kind of like stained in there permanently. So I think that's gonna give it some extra protection in the future. I don't know what I'm gonna do in terms of preventing this from happening in the future. I think I might need something in between this and the mattress pad to just allow some airflow, air movement to prevent that. So we'll see. But for now, I am going to tape this off and get a line across here to paint up to. So I'm gonna go do that real quick. All right, guys, I am not pulling magic tricks here. This is not the panel that you just saw. This is the electrical panel, which I have now brought back to the garage because it's like 2 weeks later and it is officially dry, coated with 2 coats of primer, 2 coats of topside paint. This thing turned out pretty awesome, I think. I mean, it's obviously not perfectly flat and shiny like body work or anything, but it doesn't need to be. So I got the back rails remounted on here and it is ready to go in the boat in the near future. So I'm going to get some 3M 4200. I'm going to apply it liberally on the back side of these 2 rails, kind of just squish it in place until it cures. And once that is set up, I'm going to unscrew this front panel, and then ideally these rails are going to stay in position where they were glued. And then I'm going to go and install the screws that are going to mount these rails into the side of the hull liner, not the hull. Obviously I'm not drilling through the hole. So I have those holes here already drilled. You can see them on the back side. So those are for some long screws to go into the hull liner to permanently lock these rails in place. Even though they'll be glued, I just want some additional mechanical reinforcement there. So that is the plan for the near future, getting this installed in the boat. And then I'm probably gonna pause on some of the electrical stuff for a bit, because as I mentioned earlier in the video, I need to really start getting some things done that are related to getting this thing ready for the water. And I think that is probably going to be the Bravo 3 drive over there. So we're going to jump back on that here in the near future. I need to get the U-joints reinstalled, and overall it just needs a good cleaning and coat of paint. We still need to tackle the trim rams over there. I need to reinstall anodes on everything. Yeah, I think that's going to be coming up here in the near future, but again, this feels good to have this done. The panel you saw in the last clip is still down in the basement, and that first coat is still curing. I think what I found with that topside paint is the first coat over the primer takes like forever to cure, but the second coat on this one cured within 24 hours. So I don't know, it's weird, doesn't make any sense. But anyway, that panel is curing down in the basement right now. I'll still put one more coat on that, and then that will be ready to go. Yeah, so this was kind of a weird video, guys. A lot of me talking. I apologize for that, because it probably, now that I'm saying that out loud, sounds terrible to listen to me talk. But anyway, tried to show you what we've been working on here. Yeah, I think that's gonna wrap this video up, guys. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I always try and answer all of them if I can. And yeah, until the next one, have a good one. See ya. Oh, are you jealous you weren't in that video? Huh? I'm jealous. You wanna live on the boat? Yeah, okay.